Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today's webinar is a QOF Health Check, and thank you for joining. So we've got just over 40 people, which is great. My name's Mick. I'm the support manager for Ardens, and I've been working for a practice for the past 12, 13 years. And part of my role in the practice was looking after the QOF. So lucky me. Anyway, so we've got quite a full agenda today, starting with QOF calculation and basics, how it works. Some people are aware of the different calculations. Some of the useful sections for QOF in System 1 that can help you. So various screens that we can go to. And then we'll talk about some of the reports that we've put in place. And then we've got QOF income reports and then an individualized QOF report that we can do for you as well. So quite a full half an hour, hopefully. And at the end, if you want to post any questions, you can use the chat, which is a little speech bubble at the top. And you can put your questions on there, and one of my colleagues will hopefully pick those up and help me to answer those if there's loads. Okay, so let's make a start. So the first thing we're going to look at is QOF calculations. And some of you may have gone into the CQRS screens and run some of the reports in the past. So this is an example from a practice where the report is for the years 2016-2017, so we're looking back a couple of years to see what the data was like that far back. And you can just about make out the numbers, but the total amount achieved was 177,000 plus a little bit. So not too bad. And the points was pretty much at 100%, so they did quite well. But there's this thing, a CPI adjustment, which not a lot of people know what it actually means. So what is a CPI adjustment? It's a contractor population index. So I'll briefly explain how that works. So basically, it's the practice list size divided by an annually agreed average list size. So for 2016-2017, that was 7,460 patients. And this list size does change annually. It is increased each year. So the list size, 12,649 for this practice, divided by the average list size for that year, comes out with the CPI, which in this case is 1.69. So the overall amount that this practice earned before the adjustment was 104,000 and a little bit, and then the adjustment bumped that figure up to 177,000. And the bigger the practice, the bigger the CPI adjustment. So the more patients you have, the more work you do. Therefore, the bigger the adjustment. So that's that part. QOF changes over the years. So from 2016-17, as I said, the list size has gone up each year to the current list size for this year. The average list size is 8,096. The value of the QOF point has gone up each year as well. So this year it's £179.26 for each QOF point. That's without any adjustment for prevalence. And you can see the figures are actually quite surprising, because over the last 3 years, without any adjustments for prevalence, the overall figure for the practice has actually gone down. You wouldn't expect that, because the QOF value for the point has gone up each year. But because the list size, the average list size has gone up, it's actually affected the adjustment figure, which actually means that the overall income has actually dropped slightly. But there are things that we can do about that. We can't change the list size unless you merge with another practice, or go and drag people off the street and get them to sign up to your practice. So the only thing you can do is work on the registers themselves. So that's the key, really, to increase your QOF income. So the national prevalence, you can see this in your System 1. So if I just go to System 1, oh, timed out. That's handy, isn't it? If I go to reporting QOF indicators, one of the screens you can see is the national prevalence screen. So you can see on this screen all the different registers. The unit prevalence is your practice prevalence for this year so far, the national prevalence, and then the comparison. So you can see how well you're doing compared nationally to where you should be, really. So it could be surprising if you look at those figures. Some are quite low and some are quite high, which will affect the value of the QOF point. So by increasing your register sizes, the prevalence, like it says here, you can make a big difference to the QOF point value. So from £179, you can increase that quite significantly. So in the example above there, we've got dementia. So the prevalence for this practice is 222%. So it's almost double the national average, which makes a big difference to the value of the QOF point for the dementia indicators. As you can see, around about £400 compared to 179, which is a massive difference. But also where the prevalence is below the national average, and again in this example we've got the cardiovascular disease primary prevention. This practice is well down on that area, so 10.9%. So that will have a negative impact on the value of the QOF point, and obviously your overall income for the year. So another report from the same practice, 17-18, and there's been an increase. The list size has gone up, so the CPI has changed slightly, and there's been an increase in QOF income of £25,954 compared to 2016-17. The practice list size hasn't changed. The average list size has changed slightly, but that would have a negative effect on it. The difference is that this practice has been working on its prevalence and has increased the QOF point value. So they've made a difference of nearly £26,000 in 1 year, and that will have a knock-on effect to the following years as well. So again for this year. So other useful areas in System 1 for QOF, the first one is the QOF alerts. So the first thing we do when we sign up practices to use Ardens is to send them a list of instructions, and part of that instruction tells you how to set up the QOF alerts to link them to the Ardens templates. And if I just switch to System 1, I can go to Setup, Data Output, and QOF Alert Actions. And if you've looked at this screen, you'll be familiar with it. But basically, what I've got here is a list of all the indicators for the QOF alerts for the patient home screen. The ones that are greyed out are the earlier ones, the system-generated ones. You can see it's version 38 template, so these are the TPP ones. And the bolder ones are the current ones, which are linked to the TPP templates. So it's quite a simple process to set up a new one. If I just click on New Local Alert Action, from the drop-down, click the indicator. So if I go to Chadvask, and then I need to find a template. So click on the button to find a template. And the easiest way to find the Ardens QOF templates is simply to type QOF, and you then choose the right template that you need. And the alert description doesn't always come through, so sometimes you might need to copy and paste that into that box at the bottom. And when you click OK, it then supersedes the ones that are live at the moment. If you need to amend one, just literally select, click on Amend, and then you can change the template it's linked to. If you've got the wrong template, or if there's been one updated, for example, you can do that. The confusing thing for practice staff is that if these are not set to the Ardens templates, the patient status alerts underneath the demographics box will all be linked to the Ardens templates. So if you've still got the TPP templates or other templates linked to the QOF alerts, you're going to end up opening up different templates for the same condition. And that's where you get confusion and possibly using the wrong template, the wrong read code, and affecting your QOF achievements. So that's the QOF alerts. We've also got an area that not many people know about. There's something called automating episodicity in System 1, which can be quite handy. So again, if I go back to System 1, if I go to Setup, Users and Policies, Organization Preferences, and if I scroll down to, I forgot where it is. There we go. So under Clinical Policy, Clinical Coding, and then there's an entry for Summary and Episodicity. And so on this screen, you can set a cluster of codes. So for example, here we've got cancer, we've got depression, mental health, and another mental health one as well. So any clusters of codes that are set up in here, when a clinician enters a code in that cluster, it will prompt them to record it as a new episode. which is quite useful for some of the registers where it is looking for specifically for new episodes, things like cancer and depression, which then triggers the QOF alerts and the QOF timeframes and all the rest of it. So you might want to look in here to check what's been set up on your practice. And one of the ones in here you can see has a tick in the retired column, which means that cluster has been either retired or replaced by another cluster. So that will not be working anymore. So you need to go in here and clean it up every so often. And I would suggest that every time there's a new business rule release from TPP, somebody goes in here to have a look just to make sure that they haven't replaced any of the code clusters, because this doesn't update automatically with new clusters. So it's worth a check. It's worth having a look. And there are other options in here, so you can tick to say prompt for episodicity if a read code already exists with an episodicity. So if there's already a new episode, it'll still prompt you anyway. Some practices don't like codes to be added as a summary item with a blue scroll. Others do. And down the bottom here, we've got automatic, so it creates the required problems and summary items with no interaction from the user. So that's quite a nice one as well. So the QOF alerts, just going back to them again, we need to check the dates. We've got the end of year set for now. Maybe some practices early on in the year will have their QOF alert date set to maybe 6 months into the year because they don't want to see everything that's out of date for the whole year. And maybe halfway through the year, they might switch it to the end of year to pick up all the alerts. Some of the QOF indicators rely on medications that have been issued after the 1st of October. So you'll never get rid of those alerts unless you set it to the right dates in the QOF alerts. When you set the QOF dates, it does warn you that it won't change until overnight. So the next day you come in, everything will have changed. So if somebody changes that accidentally, it does kind of mess up the QOF alerts for the day, and then you have to change it back again. So there you can see an example of a screen there with the home screen with all the QOF alerts. And the action button will take you through, hopefully, to the right TPP template, not TPP, to the Ardens template. And if it doesn't, then you need to change the QOF alerts, as I've shown you. We've done the automating episodicity. It's quite a difficult word to say. We've been in there. And the next one is the indicator values screen. So again, back into System 1, back to reporting, QOF indicators. And one of the areas in here is the indicator values. This is quite a useful screen, and you can sort the columns by clicking on the header. So when you initially go in here, it won't be sorted as I've got mine sorted, but if you just click on the header a couple of times, it will put the higher value to the top, so that you can see where you need to concentrate your effort really. So for this example, we've got dementia. There's 33 points, 119 patients who have not had their review this year for dementia, and if they're all achieved, then that would increase the income by nearly £11,000. So that's quite nice. And you can work your way down this list if you need to. But obviously the bottom end, you probably wouldn't want to target those because there's not much value in them. So target patient screen, I can't show you that in System 1 because I can't show you patient records, but I can show you a screenshot. So if anybody's been in there, they'll recognise this screen. But again, in the same area with the QOF indicators, at the bottom of the list, you've got a target patients, and underneath this box would be a list of patient names. And you can configure this screen to show however many outstanding alerts that you want. So I've got it set to show patients with more than 5 alerts, for example. You can show the top 50 or top 100, whatever you want to show, and it will show you the worst offenders of your practice that you can target. And this is quite useful towards the end of the QOF year, where you can look and pick up the last minute points from patients who are worth contacting and getting them in. So this patient, for example, you could get them in for an asthma review, a COPD review at the same time, hopefully. Probably a dementia review, mental health review, and ask them if they smoke at the same time. So if you did all that, then you would get all those 8 alerts and remove that patient from that list. So there's a whole load of missed income reports that we put together for practices to use because it is quite a complex area. And the reason that we're doing this partly is because obviously there's a financial gain for practices, but obviously it's good for the patient care as well. But also it's actually listed in the GMS contract that practices are supposed to actually validate the registers on a regular basis. So this is part of that process as well, of fulfilling your contractual requirements. And also there's this thing called National Prevalence Day, which some of you may remember used to be on the 14th of February each year, but that's now changed. It's now on the 31st of March each year. So you've got the full year to work on your registers and increase your QOF income as much as you can. So missed income reports, again, this is a screenshot to show you some examples. And you can see we've got a whole list of reports. I can just show you how to get to those in System 1. So if we go to reporting, clinical reporting, and under the Ardens folder, missed income, and then you've got QOF. There's 72 reports in there, all different conditions, looking for different review codes for medications, for values, and all the rest of it. So you can go through some of these. You can pick out the easy ones first. So, for example, asthma resolved, but repeat inhaler issued in the last year. So somebody has coded the patient with a resolved code, but they've been in again and they've been issued an inhaler. So chances are their asthma is no longer resolved, so it needs to be coded again. So in this example, there's 24 patients here that are potentially being looked after for their asthma, but the practice is not getting paid for those because they're not actually on the asthma register. And the same with other reports. We've got the asthma exacerbations or reviews or plans, any of those that have been coded, then we're looking for those to see whether we can identify patients that should be coded or diagnosed with asthma. And same with cancers, dementias on a repeat dementia medication. So we've got 3 patients been identified here. We could look at those patients and see whether they should be diagnosed with dementia or not. Again, you're not going to get paid for those unless you code them. Learning disabilities, again, we're looking for things like health examination codes, review codes, and you can see there's an awful lot on this practice. We've got 40 patients that have been coded with some sort of an examination code or review that for whatever reason are not actually on the learning disabilities register. So that's a massive loss really to the practice. They could be gaining much more. So what do you do about these patients? There's 3 things you can do. Obviously, you record the diagnosis using one of the QOF templates. You can exclude the diagnosis as well. So if you've gone through the list and you realize the patient actually shouldn't be diagnosed, but whatever the medication or whatever is for something else, you can exclude them, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Or the final one is mark the coding in error. So, for example, if they've had a review code added incorrectly, maybe from a scanning process, or somebody's just added it in error, then that can be marked in error to remove them from the reports as well. So to record the diagnosis, auto consultations, Ardens contracts. So we're in Mickey Mouse, auto consultations, and Ardens contracts, and you can see all of the QOF templates are listed there. So, for example, for asthma, you could go in and you could add a diagnosis code for asthma from there. If you've looked at the list and you think that the patient actually shouldn't be diagnosed with that condition, but you want to remove them from the reports so that you don't keep looking at those patients again and again, there's a template for that. Auto consultations, Ardens general, diagnosis excluded. So again, if we go back in, Ardens general, and diagnosis excluded. This is a template with all the conditions with tick boxes. So you could say, actually, there's no evidence found of cancer, for example, or heart failure has been excluded. And there's links to all the templates for the diagnostic criteria for each of the conditions as well. So, for example, for asthma, you could then start to do the diagnostics on that patient. And in fact, at the bottom there is another drop down for the diagnosis as well. So you could add the diagnosis code from there as well. So once you've done this, you've ticked the boxes to exclude the patient. They shouldn't come up in the reports the next time you run the reports. And obviously, finally, marking the code in error. If it's wrong, if it's a mistake, then it should be marked in error. So adding all these patients to your registers is great. It increases your prevalence and increases the QOF point value, which is fantastic for the practices. But just a caution, there are some registers which can create an additional amount of workload for practices. And as we know, some of them have got quite a tight time frame. So things like depression diagnosis, then you have to do the review within 10 to 56 days if it's added as today. If it's been backdated, then you need to check that the review has been done as well, and if the review's done, then you can code that as well. Cancer diagnosis, again, there's a review within 6 months of the diagnosis, and things like dementia diagnosis need the bloods done as well. So a few things to bear in mind when you start to add on extra patients onto your registers. A lot of the patients that you will add onto the registers, you would have already been doing the work to take care of those patients anyway. It's just that they're not on the registers, so you won't get paid for them under QOF, which would be a real shame. And normally, by increasing your prevalence, it does increase your income, so don't worry too much about adding patients onto the QOF registers, and all of a sudden the other QOF indicators start to drop. The actual amount of income is balanced out by the increased QOF value point. So then we've got these individualized QOF missed income reports that we can run on behalf of practices. If I just drag across this article here to show you. So you can request from us a bit of assistance. For a small fee, we can run some reports for you, and we'll produce a nice, sort of easy to read report for you to have a look at, with all your lists of patients as well. From in System 1, if I just go back. So there we go, it's a bit easy to see on there. So you can see all the different registers, and you can see where the missed income is. You know, so some of these sums are quite large, and you know, total amount for this practice is £28,000. That's quite a significant amount this year. And if you did that work this year, then you know, you need to bear in mind that will also give you that income, or around about that income for next year as well. So those patients will still be on the registers for next year unless they move away. So you'll get a detailed breakdown, and in the report it will say how much time roughly it will take to achieve the amount of money as well. So we tried to work it out so that you can look at the report and target your effort where it's going to take the least amount of time for the most amount of gain, really. So we try to help you as much as possible. So the work you do now will increase your prevalence, obviously, and it will increase the prevalence for the next few years as well. So it does have a positive impact on income for a couple of years at least. There's lots of useful resources. One of the good websites is the nhsemployers.org. But you know, you just need to do a Google search and you'll find loads of GMS information. And I think that's pretty much everything that we're going to cover today. If anyone's got any questions, please use the speech bubble at the top, and we'll try and answer your questions. And if you want one of these individualized QOF income reports, if you go through our support desk, there is a link there that tells you how to do it. Because there are some instructions you need to follow to export the numbers. We don't export patient names, just the numbers, so we can run the reports on your behalf. Any questions at all from anybody? Okay, hopefully you can all hear me. Oh, okay, is the webinar available after this? Yes, we are recording this, so once we stop the webinar, we'll be able to look at the recording, listen to the recording, and post it later on so that it's available for other people to look at, and also to look back as a reference for yourself. There is also, if you go to our support desk, if you type QOF, you'll find lots of useful information in there. But one of the ones I've just added is QOF updates, which covers everything that we've just gone through today. So all the CPI calculations, the prevalence, QOF alerts, automatic episodicity, indicator values, and so on, so on. So it's all on that support article if you need to use it, because I know it is quite a lot of information. Can you just say again how to request the report, please? Okay, so the report Um, on the support article, you can click on please request your individualised QOF missed income report here. So click on that link and it opens up a little form, and you fill in your details, and it tells you how to export the numbers from your system, and it even shows you some examples as well. So it's quite an easy process. You upload the spreadsheet with the numbers to this website, which comes to us. We then work on those numbers and send you the reports. Debbie's saying the sound has been intermittent. I do apologise for that. It might be something to do with the fact that the NHS network speed at the moment is pretty poor. And there has been a few problems over the last few days. And the link for the individualised QOF reports has been added to the chat window as well, where you can get to it. After adding the exception codes using the auto consult, when going through the prevalence, will patients get re-added into the reports if new data is entered to check again at a later date? Dave, I think you probably need to email me after this. If you email support@ardens.org.uk and put the details a bit more in there, what you mean, and I can try and answer that, because I'm not fully sure what you mean. I wouldn't want to give you all the wrong information. Anything else? So I hope you're all working through your QOF patients, and obviously the flu season's going well, and I hope you're all finding that all the reports that we've got in place are being useful. In the missed income, I can't see a CVD PP report. Am I missing it? Again, viewer 35, I don't know who you are, I don't know what your name is. It's coming up as viewer 35. If you email that request through to us, I can look at that and I can give you an answer. Anything else before we go? Okay, well, I think we're going to call it a day there. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much.